Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of A Cuppa with. I hope you've got your brews all ready to listen. I've been a bit quiet on the podcast. There's been some stuff going on, so rather than give you a half-assed podcast, I'd rather have a proper conversation with people that matter. So I've got a lot going on. As I've said on the last podcast, I've just signed up for a 100k ultra marathon that's happening in July, so I've been keeping up my training with that. I'll have the link to my Just Giving page soon. It's all for the Mental Health Foundation, and I have their full support, which I am so proud to have. Apart from that, it's just there's up and coming stuff. Can't really talk about it now, but hopefully you'll see it soon. But I have a guest today, and rather than me waste time introducing him, I'd like him to introduce himself. So go for it.
Yeah, I'm Dennis Relojo-Howell. You can just call me Dennis. I'm based in East London and I run a website called PsychReg. So basically what it is, it's a website on psychology, mental health and well-being. So essentially what I do is I run a blog and then I co-run a podcast and I also run an open access journal. And also I host events. Just recently, about 3 weeks ago, I just came back from Malaysia. I organized an international conference there. And yeah, so basically that's what I do in a nutshell.
So what got you into it?
My background is in psychology. So I'm originally from the Philippines and then I came here in 2013. I came here in the UK to do my master's degree. And then while I was doing my master's degree, I developed an interest in reading mental health blogs. And that kind of inspired me to launch my own blog. So I think my story is quite unique in respect that I don't have a mental health diagnosis. I'm just uniquely interested with mental health. So I just want to create a platform for people who are struggling with mental health issues. And like what I've said, obviously my background in psychology has got something to do with it.
So that's an interesting side from people who I've had a lot of people on who've talked about their mental health issues. I don't get many people that come and talk about just the love of wanting to help, because generally it comes from a background of being in that position and then wanting to not let anybody else feel that way and then helping in that way. So it's interesting to meet somebody who's actually not got that history but is intrigued enough to want to help and then create that safety platform for people to talk about mental health and their experiences and what they're feeling. And I commend you, because we need to see more of it. So we need to see more of it. And how have you seen things change since you've been working with mental health and obviously with your psychology background and stuff like that?
Yeah, I also before I answer that, I also want to add that another reason why I'm running a mental health blog is because ultimately I'm a blogger. I did not really started being a mental health blogger straight away. I've been blogging for nearly 15 years now. Okay. So I started as a personal blogger. When I say a personal blogger, someone who just writes about his experiences and about his opinions. And then after 5 years, I became a travel blogger, because when I was in my early 20s, I was a backpacker. I loved traveling to different places on my own and just kind of share the places that I've been. So, and then later on, like what I've said earlier, I developed my blog into a mental health blog. Now, going back to your question, you asked me what I think, what I notice about the mental health landscape is that I think when I started blogging about mental health, it's really quite a specific niche. You know, like not a lot of people talk about mental health compared to how they would talk about it now, because a lot of you'll find all sorts of mental health bloggers right now.
Yeah.
You've got celebrities talking about their mental health, and you've got YouTubers talking about mental health. It's quite interesting. How would I say it? It's positive that we actually have a range of bloggers talking about mental health, but we're also bordering towards glamorizing mental health.
Thank you.
You know what I mean.
I agree with you so much, and I'm so glad somebody else said this, because I thought I was the only one. And I say thought I was the only one, but I know a couple of others that have said it to me. But the fact that you've said that it's got to the point of it's nearly at glamorizing, what part of it do you think is being glamorized?
What I would say is like where we often people often use a lot of mental health diagnosis not in the context of mental health diagnosis. Like we just throw mental health diagnosis like depression, like because coming from a psychology perspective, I think we have to be careful about the mental health diagnosis that we use. Yeah. You're not just supposed to say that you're suffering with depression unless it's really clinical depression. You have to have a mental diagnosis, I suppose, instead of just saying that I've got depression, I've got anxiety. Because when you use it that way, you're kind of trivializing the actual mental health diagnosis.
Yeah.
It's one thing that we openly talk about mental health diagnosis, but we're about mental health issues, but we have to be careful about using words, using diagnosis when we talk about mental health issues. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
No, I completely agree. There's I think people get confused between they're feeling depressed and depression, and they're having they're anxious or they have anxiety. There is a very big difference between the two, and I've noticed that a lot of people are very carefree with their language, which I think takes away some of the genuineness of people who are actually have depression, have anxiety, have other mental health issues that are derived from that, but because they're used in such a cast off kind of way, they now don't feel comfortable in saying it because of, it's just another person with anxiety, just another person with depression. And we're kind of going full circle. We've gone from not being able to talk about it to being able to talk about it to everybody saying it to now people not feeling comfortable about saying it.
Exactly.
And I think people like yourself who are outside of it, who can actually go, no, these are the things that we're trying to like differentiate between the two, and with the blogging that you're doing, I think that helps people to understand the difference.
Exactly. It's interesting that you pointed at that. I'm looking at it from an outsider perspective, but there's also a negative aspect if you don't have a lived experience of mental health and you run a blog about mental health, because people tend to be suspicious of your intention and why are you blogging. I remember I was at a conference in London, I think about 4 months ago, and I asked one of the panelists, like, what advice would you give to mental health bloggers like myself who don't have a lived experience? Because I'm not going to deny to you, I've been accused sometimes of I am the one glamorizing mental health issues in exchange of views, because I'm a full-time blogger. My main source of income is just my blog. So I earn from the ads, I earn from sponsored content. So obviously, the more people visit my website, the more earnings I've got. So, I don't try to be defensive, but I just say to people that my intention is really to promote mental health, and I just invite people to write about their mental health stories, and on top of that, I organize events. But I'm not really one of those people who glamorize mental health issues. So I would have lots of views on my blog.
But that's the thing is, though, you say that, and how people kind of sort of demonize people on the outside. But if you think about it, you go to a doctor to say because you've I don't know, you've got asthma. You wouldn't turn around and say, no, I'm not going to seeing you because you don't have asthma. So
Exactly.
it's the same thing. It's not about just people who have experienced it that need to talk about it. Everybody needs to talk about it, and understanding that there's a difference between mental health and mental health issues, mental health disorders. There are two very different things, because in my opinion, mental health is something you look after every day. And then mental health issues and disorders are something that when something's either gone wrong or you've had trauma or something that's made your mental health not be able to cope with stuff, so it needs the help, the extra help. And I think we get confused because mental health is such a buzzword at the moment, and to be fair, we need to be talking about it in the same way as we do physical health. But in the same ways, we can't just have people with broken legs talking about broken legs. We need to have people who don't have mental health issues or anything like that talking about mental health, because then it becomes the average conversation and people don't feel so stigmatized about talking about it.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm glad you pointed it out. That I think it's better if we try to talk about mental health from a different perspective, from someone with lived experience, and from someone from an observer perspective like myself, and also from an academic perspective, because also a lot of people at universities, they don't have lived experience of mental health issues, and they just they do research about mental health issues. So I think it's important to consider what people can bring into the table, so we have a fuller picture of what mental health is, or what mental health issues is. I'm glad you pointed out the difference between mental health and mental health issues. I myself, I'm also guilty of, sometimes I just use the word interchangeably. But I know there's a difference.
Well, it's an easy slip of the tongue. But we're all human at the end of the day. But I think that no matter your perspective or your experience of mental health and mental health issues, everybody has something to bring to the table. Whether or not it's a change in the view from somebody who's never had that experience, because if they don't have that experience but don't talk to people, or they're excluded from being able to talk about it, they're going to keep a very shallow mind of what's about it because they don't know. And then if you keep people that are only talking about mental health issues together, then how are they going to be able to not feel, how are they ever going to be able to be included and integrated as everybody else does if we're all stuck together? The whole point is to cross over so we can all talk about it together.
Exactly.
So what other things have you come across within your blogging and the people that you've come across? What's your experiences with talking to people and everything?
My main experience of talking people with lived experience comes from the events that I organize. So last December, I organized an event called Mental Health Bloggers Conference. So from the name itself, it's a conference for mental health bloggers like myself. It was attended by about 30 people. It was held last December of last year. So it's interesting because most of the people there, they've got lived experience of mental health, and that's how they started running their mental health blogs. A lot of people have anxiety experiences and depressive experiences, and it's quite a different event compared to the academic conference that I organized, because I also organized some academic conference like the one I've hosted in Malaysia, because academic conference they're for university lecturers and for PhD students. So they talk about their research, they talk about counseling. So I think that's my main source of hearing mental health issues from people. But I also I attend a lot of mental health events. Uh, I've been to a few mental health events in London. Usually the conferences that I attend usually are academic conferences, so I hear a lot of theoretical perspective about mental health.
Yeah.
But talking about event, I'm collaborating with I hope this is not preemptive, but I'm collaborating with a PR agency, and we're organizing a World Mental Health Forum to
Okay.
be held October next year. It's not going to be an academic event, but it's more of people who are interested about mental health, whether it's because they've got lived experience or they're looking after people who've got mental health issues. So it will be interesting to host an event like that, because I'm interested hearing about how people cope with their mental health issues.
How has, with some, from your perspective of not having issues, how has it changed interacting with these people? How has it changed your view of it?
Because fundamentally, the reason why I attend mental health event is because my background is in psychology. Before I became a mental health blogger, I was a psychology lecturer. So I've always been interested about human behavior, and it's just different, like because as a lecturer, I just read from textbooks, and if you read from textbook, it's kind of different from when you're talking and you're listening to people who've got actual lived experience of mental health, because you're able to contextualize mental health issues from a perspective of lived experience. It's one thing reading about anxiety, but if you get to talk to someone with anxiety issues, it just allows you to understand behavior from a different perspective. I remember, when I was at university, I was reading things about schizophrenia, about psychosis. But just last year, I had a speaker. He's from America, and he traveled all the way here to be one of the speakers. And he's got lived experience of psychosis and schizophrenia, and he talked about it. So you just feel how how limiting psychosis is, and how it could devastate your lives. So, and if you hear lived experiences like that, you're grateful that you don't have to go through that. That you don't have anxiety, you don't have depression, you don't have psychosis. You begin to be more grateful of I would say positive mental health.
That's the thing is like, from what I would say, that it's knowing that you can speak to people. It makes you grateful for who you are, but also it makes you grateful for these people that are now able to speak, because if events like this are not run, these voices are not heard, these experiences are not heard. And I think when we do have these exchange of experiences, whether or not we've had them or we've not had them, when we exchange these experiences, the thing that comes out of them is gratitude. Because whether or not it's the gratitude of, you know what, I'm lucky with my life, I'm happy with my life, or I'm grateful that I'm able to speak about these things on a platform where I feel safe, I'm quite happy, this could help somebody. These are things that are so needed. We need more of them. So I'm grateful for you for having these opportunities for people to have these open spaces to talk, because if we're not heard, how is anything ever going to change?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why I try to collaborate with as many people as possible. I also try to host events in different places, not just in London. I go out in different countries.
Yeah.
Because it's also interesting to hear mental health talk about from a cultural perspective.
Yes, it's very different in different cultures, and even just within the UK itself, different cultures and different backgrounds
Yeah,
also bring to a whole range of different things. Like for me, I'm white British. My family is white British as far back as I can call. But my kid's dad is very mixed. So his background of mental health is very different. It's so it's so interesting to know that we live in, even just in the UK, we live in the UK is such a multicultural place, but within that we have an ability to find out about different cultures and different cultures aspects that when we hopefully we can travel this out, and that means that we can talk about this more, so that when we go into different cultures we have a little understanding, and then we can spread that out, that mental health is not this demonized thing. It's not putting the madman in the corner. It is understanding that everybody works differently.
exactly. Yeah. You mentioned about cultural perspective, because I'll just share to you about my experience. Because
Okay.
I grew up in the Philippines. I grew up in a slum in Manila. So but basically, I don't know how it is to have running water or electricity. I've never used a toilet until I was 10. So
Wow.
I think, sorry.
I said, wow, like to me, from my background,
Thank
it
you.
wouldn't have even, it's not something that I would register. So,
Yeah. So I think because of my childhood experience, the greatest thing that I've learned is resilience. And even though I don't have mental health issue, that's why I tell to people, there's a power in being resilient of what happened to you. Of course, it's not applicable in a range of mental health issues, but yeah, I think whatever comes away, if we can be resilient, we need to be resilient.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, I echo that 100%. I was gonna say before you the first word when you told me your background, the first word I was like, you must have so much resilience, and it's a skill. I think we need to build it. It's like it's not something that you are initially born with. It's something that you have to practice every day, and I think that's one of the main weapons against mental health issues. Well, some mental health issues, obviously there are a lot of ones that need more help than that, but a resilience. But even if you have a mental health diagnosis that is more severe, the fact that you have
Mhm.
resilience to continue on every day, even if you don't feel like it, you've built that resilience to keep going, to know that you're hopefully to know that you are loved and you are wanted in this world. And that's still in its way, even if it's not helping with the diagnosis as such. The resilience is what helps you get through every day. It's that grit, it's and that needs to be practiced every day. And it sounds like you obviously practiced it every day as you was growing up, and
Mhm.
and I think that by showing what you're doing, you're helping others have that resilience.
Yeah, and talking about resilience, I also admire those. This might be a bit of tangent, but
Go for it.
I also admire those parents who raise children with special needs. Because what I do on my website is I publish a range of mental health stories. But what comes close to my heart is those parents who talk about raising children with autism and
That's
any
me.
other conditions.
That's me.
Because
My son has autism.
okay. Because I just admire them because they don't have mental health issues, but all of a sudden they got married, they have family, and then all of a sudden they were they have a child with autism, and it must really be a challenging lifestyle, that all of a sudden your life has completely changed, but you have to carry on. And I think that's a good example of being resilient. There's one woman who champions special education and promotes promotes awareness about autism. You probably heard about her, Dr. Anna Kennedy.
Sounds familiar.
She Yeah, she runs Autism Got Talent, and I've been to her event, Autism Got Talent. It's an annual event in London. Yeah, it's a talent show for children with autism, and I've just seen so many parents and families with autism, and I can see they're very resilient. They're very determined about campaigning about raising awareness about autism, and yeah, I really admire those people. Yeah, that it's a different, it's a different aspect of mental health issues. They don't directly have it, but they have to
Yep.
promote awareness about autism.
My son, he was diagnosed when he was 5, and I think not only that, but it doesn't just give you resilience, it gives you a different way of thinking. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because autistic children, in my experience, are very literal. There isn't
Mm-hmm.
there isn't there isn't stuff there's stuff that you can't do or say that they would understand, because they just don't get it. But
Mm-hmm.
knowing that you have to think a different way makes you view the world differently as well, because then you have to kind of work around. You're never going to see it the way they see it, because it's completely individual to them. But knowing that they see the world differently and struggle, and they build their resilience, makes you as a parent of them build your resilience. Because if they can go through every day seeing the world completely different and knowing that they're not going to be able to quite fit in like everybody else does, then and they build that resilience, it makes you go, right, well, if you can do this and you're my child, I can do this for you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I completely understand that one.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that basically what you're saying is that you have to be resilient for the sake of your children, and for the sake of helping people understand the condition of autism.
Yeah, oh yeah, because people don't understand when your child is having a meltdown in the middle of a shopping centre. So, and I've had people shout at me, control your child, the lot. And I'm like, my son is autistic and had a meltdown. What do you want me to do? And you have to be able to voice that and stand up.
Mm-hmm.
Because beforehand, when I wasn't sure, I'd be like, I'm really sorry, and be very meek and very, like, now I'm just like, if my son has a meltdown, I don't give a damn. Like, he's got to come out of it for me to sort him out. You don't matter. What matters to me is my son at this very moment of time. And it helps you build that resilience, because you have to protect them. You have to, they're at their most vulnerable in those situations. So you have to be your most resilient and strongest to be able to handle this situation and make sure that they know that there's somebody there that they love, that's loved and supported, and can take care of them when they're feeling like that.
Yeah, it's good thing to hear. A different aspect of resilient. It's also about parenting and raising a child with autism.
Yeah, well, I have my son is autistic, and my daughter has diabetes type 1. So
Okay.
I've had to learn to resilience is number 1 on that list. Otherwise, you don't get through. So, but it I think it's something that if we can keep practicing every day, and then show each other how we can be resilient, and it's like knowledge we can pass on, to keep going, to keep not giving up, to knowing that you can get through today. Just take one day at a time. If you can't take one day at a time, take 1 hour at a time. If you can't take 1 hour at a time, take 1 minute at a time. It's one of those things that you might not be sure of what happens tomorrow, but you can be sure of what's going to happen in this very moment at this very time, and you can manage this minute, and then just go on like that, and that helps you build the resilience.
Mm-hmm. I think there ought to be a workshop about that. Like parents who've got raising children with autism, and you have to talk about other parents who are in the same situation.
Well, if you want to set that up at your forum, I'm quite happy to come and talk. Yeah. I'm very happy to come and talk about resilience.
That will be on another on my next agenda.
Add me to that. I have no problems in talking about resilience. So what do you have to go forward to help? What more do you want to do to help?
Right now, I'm just concentrating on my blog. I've taken this. I've decided to have this as a full-time job, and I've decided to focus on mental health. So I just try to be good at what I'm doing. I just try to create relevant content about mental health, and obviously I can't do everything on my own. I can't be a podcast host like you. So, but having a podcast has always been a dream. So that's why when I launched my website, I look for a partner, and by glorious coincidence, I came across with these two gentlemen from America, Dr. Bernie Wilkinson and Dr. Richard Marshall. They're lecturers from Florida, and we have come up with some arrangement to host their podcast. So that's another aspect of my blog. And I also run an open access journal, like what I've said. So basically, it's for academics, and then I host events. So I just try to look for ways to create informative and relevant content for people who are interested about mental health. And I think it's my way of just contributing to the stock of human knowledge about mental health, about psychology. And I'm just trying to convey a message that for you to be good in this discipline, you don't have to have a lived experience, but you just have to be genuinely interested about mental health. I just think that you really don't have to have a lived experience. You just have to be interested about what you're doing. It's just so happened that I'm interested about it. I love what I do, and I love organizing mental health events. So
see, that's the thing.
I think I'll just
that's the thing is you don't have to have lived experience. You just have to have knowledge, want to learn, and want to be in service of others. I think that's the whole point. Is being in service of others is going to help anyway. When you're putting yourself to be in service to help others, then only good can come, because you're doing your best to help others in a situation. Even if you don't understand it, you can be the bridge. You can be the bridge between them and the information that they need. And I think that's what you're doing, and I commend it.
Yeah, thank you. But basically, another thing, that the reason why I run a mental health blog is I told you before. I was a university lecturer before I came in the UK, but it's quite difficult to be a lecturer for me in the UK, because it's so competitive here. You have to have a PhD to be an academic, and you've got to have the right connection. And I haven't decided yet whether I will do my PhD. So I think the closest that I could come up with, with in terms of educating people about my chosen field, is just to run a blog. So yeah, that's what I do.
See, you saw an obstacle, you found a way around it. That's resilience. See, you're using your resilience.
Thank you.
And I say, like, keep doing what you're doing. You don't, like you say, you don't have to have lived experience to help others. Helping others just comes from wanting to see others do well, or at least do better than what they were doing before. And connecting people, voicing, all of these things help others that might not have had a voice before. And I think that's an amazing thing to do. So we're coming to the end. So I'm going to say thank you. Also, where can people find you?
I'm quite active on Twitter, so just look up for my name, and I also have a personal website, so just Google my name. It's Dennis Relojo, so Relojo, Howell. I have a double-barreled name. And if you let me plug, I also work for a radio station in London. It's called Men's Radio Station. So they talk about all things mental health and well-being for men. I usually join the show on Wednesday and a Friday. So I'll be on Men's Radio Station on this coming Wednesday.
Hey.
And also, on Friday. So it's another aspect of mental health. Just talk about the live experience from a men's perspective.
And that's so needed with the high rate of men suicide just lately. It's so needed. So that's amazing. And I'm glad you plug away. If you're going to plug that sort of plug away, I'm all happy for it. And what I'll do is when I put this up, I will put links and everything so people can find it, come and have a look at what you're doing and everything like that. So again, I want to say thank you because listeners, he reached out to me, which is, I think that's amazing. And I feel so privileged that you reached out to me. So again, thank you for that.
Thank you for having me.
Anybody else, by all means, reach out to me. I'm quite happy to talk to everybody and anybody. It's a subject that I love and I can't stop talking about it, if I'm honest. So I'm just going to say thank you again. Go look him up. Go look for Dennis. I'm sure you'll find all the information. I'll make sure all the information's there. Again, thank you. And to my listeners, share, like, come and comment. Please, you're all welcome to have a chat. Anybody is welcome on this podcast. I'm quite happy to talk to everybody and anybody. Hell, I like talking to everybody and anybody. So on that note, I'd like to say good day, good brew.